All right, let's talk about something that's quietly changing the face of healthcare, one story at a time. It's called narrative medicine, and it's all about a simple but really powerful idea that sometimes the best tool a doctor has isn't a prescription pad, it's the ability to just listen.
You know that feeling, right? You're sitting there on the exam table, the paper crinkling, and you feel like you've just been boiled down to a set of symptoms on a chart. You're not you anymore, you're the migraine in room 2. It's a real disconnect, and trust me, it's not just in your head.
And look, don't get me wrong, modern medicine is incredible. It's a miracle that saves lives every single day. But in that rush to figure out the biological puzzle of a disease, the actual human experience of being sick can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So how did we even get here? How did we get to a point where we have to actively remind ourselves to treat the person and not just the problem?
Well, to really get the solution, we've got to understand the problem first. The idea of the detached clinician didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually the result of a very deliberate, century-long shift in how we think about medicine and how we train our doctors.
And this timeline, wow, it really lays it all out. It all kicked off back in 1910 with something called the Flexner Report. This was a huge deal that basically forced medical schools to get serious about science. And that was a good thing, right? It got rid of a lot of quackery. But over the next few decades, that focus on pure, hard science created this new ideal, the doctor as this totally objective, emotionally distant scientist. And the result? Clinical detachment became the gold standard. Being emotionally distant wasn't just accepted, it was seen as professional. And this is where things get really interesting. You've got these two totally different realities happening at the same time. On one side, you have the doctor's checklist. What's wrong? How did it happen? What do we do? It's all very logical, very efficient. But on the other side, that's the patient's experience. Feeling like you're just a body part, like you're not being heard, like you're a number, not a name. That's the gap we're talking about. But just as the system was getting about as detached as it could get, something started to change. A powerful counter-movement began to bubble up. And it came from the patients themselves, who started to fight back, not with weapons, but with their words. The AIDS epidemic in the 1980s was a huge turning point. Activists figured out that the silence around the disease was literally killing people. So their rallying cry, "Silence equals death," wasn't just a slogan. It was this powerful demand for patients to reclaim their own stories, to force the world to see them as human beings, not just statistics. And this gave rise to what we now call the illness narrative. You see it in incredible books like Audre Lorde's The Cancer Journals. I mean, these weren't just personal diaries, they were acts of protest. They described what it felt like to be sick, creating this powerful counterstory to the cold, clinical charts. It was all about saying, my experience matters just as much as my lab results. So, right in the middle of this tension between the detached doctor and the newly empowered patient, a whole new field was born. And the goal wasn't to throw out the science, but to plug it back into, well, our humanity. And that field is narrative medicine. Dr. Rita Sharon came up with the term. And it's an approach that sees a patient's story not as a fluffy distraction, but as a crucial piece of the medical puzzle. The whole point is to train doctors and nurses to get better at hearing, understanding, and, this is the key part, to actually be moved by the stories their patients are telling them. The name for this skill, the ultimate goal here, is something they call narrative competence. It's the ability to hear the story that's hiding behind the symptoms. Okay, so that sounds great, but how in the world do you actually teach someone to do that? So how do they do it? How do you build that kind of competence? Well, it turns out one of the best ways to train doctors to understand real-life stories is to have them practice with fictional ones. Yeah, the process is actually fascinating. Medical students in these programs read novels and poetry to practice seeing the world from someone else's point of view. Then they write about their own encounters with patients, which helps them understand their own feelings and biases. And finally, they get together in groups and just tell and listen to stories. It's like building an empathy muscle. They're training the heart just as seriously as they train the mind. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It's from Henry James, and it perfectly describes the goal. It's not about just waiting for your turn to speak or trying to pull out data. It's about becoming that empty cup, creating a space with your attention where the patient's story has room to be told and to be truly heard. Okay, so let's bring this all back home. What's the big takeaway? Why does any of this, the history, the literature, the listening, actually matter to you the next time you're the one sitting in that exam room? All right, first things first, and this is super important. This is not about getting rid of science. Nobody's saying we should trade in our MRI machines for memoirs. That big push for scientific rigor a century ago led to incredible breakthroughs that we all benefit from today. No, it's about putting the two back together. It's about bringing the art of human connection back into the science of medicine. It's about recognizing something pretty simple, really, that to truly heal someone, you have to treat the whole person, their body, their mind, and their story. Which kind of leaves us with this one last big thought. We teach doctors to ask, where does it hurt? It's the most basic question of medicine. But what if the real key to better care, to deeper healing, to a system that feels more human, lies in a totally different question? What's your story?